Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is your third episode of Catch a View from Above the Ring. I am your host, Scott, better known as Vince's voice of reason and the Nostradamus of professional wrestling. Tonight we go back. We talk about WrestleMania once again, but I have two very special guests with me tonight. They are classmates of mine from Northern Vermont University, Lyndon campus. Yes, this old man is going back to school so he can finish his degree. So he's found himself some wrestling fans that are much younger than him. So this should be a fun conversation. So my guests tonight are Jack Cushman and James Salvis. If I butchered your last names, I apologize. Guys, how are we?
Got it.
How are we doing tonight, guys?
Good. I'm doing good.
Yeah, I'm good, Scott.
Sunday for sure, but
I know recording late on a Sunday, and
classes start tomorrow.
Yeah,
So
I know. Just getting out of our spring break, and we got a month left, and then it's summertime, and then for me at least, only one more semester. I'm not sure about you guys. How much more time you guys got left?
Probably 3 years. I'm a sophomore right now, but I'm gonna go into education after I get my degree in the journalism.
Nice.
So for me, I actually changed my major this semester to general studies. So that's an associate's degree.
Okay.
So I can graduate with that next spring.
Nice.
So then I'm not really sure what I'm going to do after that, but I'm probably going to try and get a bachelor in something after that.
Very nice. Very nice. So the reason why I had you guys on tonight, it's funny because we're all in the same social media class, and we, by some chance, all figured out we're all wrestling fans. So I was just like, well, I need to have these gentlemen on this podcast so we can talk about WrestleMania, talk about wrestling, and just have a whole lot of fun. So we'll just jump right into the main show itself. Obviously, it was, by the time this comes out, it'll be about 2 weeks since Mania. So I guess my first question is, how much did you guys watch of WrestleMania? Were you able to get through both nights, or were just one night was enough?
So for me, mostly I watched the first night. I wasn't able to really watch much of the second night, but from what I saw the first night, I really enjoyed it. There was a couple really, really good matches. The Cody Rhodes Seth Rollins match was really, really good. The Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio tag match against The Miz and Logan Paul, that was entertaining. That was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, because I personally really can't stand Logan Paul. So I wasn't sure what he was going to do in the ring, but he actually showed off some good athleticism and some not bad in-ring moves. He had clearly trained. But the best match of the night by far was Kevin Owens and Stone Cold in the main event. Getting to see Stone Cold out there one more time after all that crap that Kevin Owens had been talking, that was just phenomenal to see. And it was like the first time I had ever seen Stone Cold wrestle live, because he was retired by the time, I was growing up and watching wrestling.
Just dates me even more. I remember watching Stone Cold in his prime before he was Stone Cold, but we'll get to that later on. Jack, what about you, man?
Boston. I was on my way back from a lacrosse game night one. So I didn't see much of night one. I did see the Mysterios Paul and Miz match, which I thought was good. Logan looked good. I thought I feel like it was a good weekend for celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
It really was. Yeah.
The Knoxville match, getting into night two, was call it what you will. A lot of people not like that, but I thought it was entertaining. At least they definitely achieved what they were going for. So
yeah, and I love how the crowd popped so hard when Wee Man did the scoop slam to Sami Zayn. That was fantastic.
I did see a video of that. That was crazy.
I was hoping Steve-O was going to come out. I was really hoping for Steve-O.
That's true. Yeah, he definitely. Yeah, that's true. Now that you mentioned that, he was definitely not there, which is unfortunate. But they did more than enough to make it very entertaining.
Oh, it was good. Yeah, very entertaining. I liked it. Liked it a lot. And back on night one, Cody and Seth felt like a big match, like a big deal.
Yeah.
Which was like Cody coming out, like he still has the music, the entrance. Like, to me, that was one of my personal favorites of the weekend, just because like how big of a deal it felt.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
the first one to come from AEW.
Right. Yeah.
So
That
it
was
just felt like a big deal
yeah.
to me.
The like you mentioned, the fact that he was able to keep his whole character, the whole American Nightmare, his theme music, his entrance, the whole shebang. I did some reading up on it, and apparently that's what Vince wanted when they had that conversation. Cody was like, this is what I want to do. And Vince was like, well, that's what I'm trying to buy. So I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, well, I guess that works.
Very happy he didn't come out as like dashing or
Stardust.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
very-
expecting like when I heard that, like, I mean, when they said Seth Rollins had a mystery opponent, I knew who it was going to be.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be Cody Rhodes. I was kind of hoping, just for like the vibes and stuff, that it would have been The Rock. That would have been really cool, because everybody's been telling me, and I've been reading about it and stuff, that The Rock said he's going to come back and wrestle.
Yep.
But I've yet to see it. He's been talking about this for like 2 years, and I've yet to see him put the tights back on and step back in the ring.
Yeah, it's funny with The Rock because he loves WWE, but the man is right now one of the hottest stars out in Hollywood, and it's tough because a lot of the contracts that he signs when he does these movies are like, no, you're not allowed to do physical contact outside of your acting and your stuntman.
Yeah.
So it's tough. I have my theories. I truly feel like since WrestleMania next year will be in Hollywood, that The Rock will find his way to challenge Roman Reigns. And personally, I hope Roman wins. I hope Roman continues to be champion for God knows how long.
I disagree.
See, that's fine. We will talk about all this.
He holds it for as long as they'll let him.
Now with him being a double champion too, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Gross.
See, I like this. We have disagreements, and we will talk them out. It's the best part about wrestling. You don't have to necessarily like all the same stuff. But for me, I was talking with James before we started recording, and for me, night one was more of the professional wrestling episode of WrestleMania, and night two was more of the sports entertainment side, especially with the Knoxville Sami Zayn match. It was just, I don't know, like I felt like night two had more theatrics to it, and it was just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Honestly, I feel like this Mania was probably, at least for me, one of my favorites for a while. Probably maybe when Kofi won the title, and then before that, WrestleMania 30, when Daniel Bryan won. For me, those would probably be my three favorites in recent years.
Yeah. I was just going to say, like, in my opinion, like, this was one of the better WrestleManias I've seen in recent years. Last year's was horrible. It was not horrible, but this year's was so much better.
Yes.
It had such more of a star-studded cast. The matches were much more entertaining. Hell, I'll even say that the Charlotte Flair Becky Lynch match, or the Charlotte Flair match that she was in, was a very good match. And I'm not, like, I don't really pay attention to divas that much for wrestling, but I saw that match, and that was actually, in terms of a divas match, one of the better ones I've seen. That was a very, very good match between Charlotte Flair and her opponent. I think it was Becky Lynch. I can't remember that.
Are you talking about this year's WrestleMania, or are you talking about last year's? This year's it was Ronda Rousey.
Rousey, yes.
That was a very, what's the word I want to use?
I wanted Ronda Rousey to win, but it was a good match.
I feel like, I don't know, and I only caught a little bit of that match, but from what I've seen, like, people talk about online and stuff, I feel like Ronda has never caught on in WWE. At least a little bit. There's a large portion I feel like that don't really like her there.
It's interesting because she
Very
had
divided.
she was such a such a talked about figure in UFC. Either you loved her or you hated her, depending on, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, very polarizing, exactly. And she kind of brought that over when she came to WWE.
Uh-huh.
I thought her wrestling was fine. It was like an MMA style. I will say though, when she had her mixed tag match in her first WrestleMania against Triple H and Stephanie, she surprised me a lot with how she was with Triple H. It might have also just been Triple H being Triple H and just making her look like $1 billion. But I mean, she's an MMA style. I mean, we already have that with Shayna Baszler and you know, Sonya Deville. They have that baseline, so they're already. I'm already, you know, I have exposure to that already. So she just brings so much star power and so much mainstream media to WWE that you either love her or you hate her. And I thought the match with Charlotte this past year or this past Mania was okay. Um, Leading up to Mania, both of them did, at least in my opinion, subpar job when it came to promos to try to make this match look good. Um, of course, then they had some unaired ones that I think was on ESPN where it was just like, why wasn't this on television? Like, what the hell? Like, this looks really good. But the match itself, I thought was okay. I'm actually not mad that Charlotte won. Now they have an I Quit match at WrestleMania Backlash next month, so
Yeah.
that should be interesting when that rolls around.
Yeah, I wasn't mad that Charlotte won because I mean, obviously Charlotte's one of my favorite divas. Like if I had to pick one, like I said, I don't really pay attention to divas. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Ronda Rousey a lot too, but I mean, I kind of agree with Jack. I just feel like besides doing the stuff with Roddy Piper before he died, when she was like, you know, doing the hot rod stuff, like
Yep.
I don't feel like she's ever really caught on. Although, in my opinion, like I feel like she only looked so good for that because of Roddy Piper and his legacy in the ring and stuff. Although I don't think Rousey's a bad wrestler in terms of like divas, but she's no like Trish Stratus or she's no Lita or she's no like there's other like great divas. Like even Charlotte Flair is a better wrestler. Like, I mean, it's Ric Flair's daughter. Like, what do you expect? You know what I mean? Ric Flair is one of the greatest to ever do it in the WWE. Some people would even say the greatest.
She definitely
I
has the
love
most
that.
titles out of everybody right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if she was the first. She's got 13 championships right now. It wouldn't surprise me if she was the first one to break Rick's record. Oh, Rick and John Cena's record at 16. So
Yeah, I agree. I liked it. They both feel like big deals, which again, like at WrestleMania, that's what you want, right?
Yep.
Like Ronda, whatever she's doing, love her, hate her, is gonna feel like a big deal. And same with Charlotte. I mean, how
Exactly.
long has she been on top of the women's division? Like since um WrestleMania 32, a little before then.
Yeah, Charlotte's been on top for
yeah,
a few years
she's
now.
yeah, she's definitely been up there for a while. It's funny because when Rick had his retirement match, which I believe was 24,
24 in Orlando.
23.
Was it 23?
24.
Because
Like
then
Charlotte
Shawn Michaels fought
wasn't even.
WrestleMania back to back, or
Okay.
fought The Undertaker back to back.
That was
24.
25 and 26 was Taker and Shawn Michaels.
It was 24.
Yeah, so it would have been 24 then. I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's right. But Charlotte wasn't even a wrestler at that point, and then she comes in, I think, a year or two later, and then all of a sudden she just starts. I don't know what it was. Like I remember watching her in NXT, and I'm just like, oh wow, okay, so it's Charlotte Flair. Okay, all right. Obviously, we'll see how this goes. And she was fine, and then all of a sudden, it just like a switch flipped, and off she went.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
Yeah, and like to start late, she was closer to 30 than 20 when she started, wasn't she?
Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah, because her
Exactly.
brother was supposed to be the one that was supposed to
David.
take the wrestling reins and run with it, but you know, when he passed away, she kind of took up the reins and
say David Flair had a run in WCW, right?
that is true. Yes, that is true.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I was really surprised, like, that there hasn't been other like guy members of Ric Flair's family that haven't tried to like step in the ring. But like you said, his son died, so it was like, and he died very young,
Yep.
so it was before he really got a chance to do anything in the industry. And Charlotte just kind of saw an opportunity with the Divas and just took it and ran with it.
Yep.
And I mean, I think people are gonna say, you know, if she can string together 2 or 3 more championships and carry on the Flair legacy, I think people are going to say that, like, you know, she might go down as one of the greatest, if not the greatest divas of all time. Although, in my personal opinion, I think it's, you know, Lita or Trish Stratus or China.
China, that's true. You can't forget the ninth
China
wonder of the
slept
world,
on.
China.
China slept on.
It's true. It is true.
No, I agree. In terms of, you know, the women's division, Charlotte has changed it forever for sure. Her group, she came in like the horsewomen.
Yep.
For sure. And speaking of the horsewomen, is Bailey still injured? Like,
she is. She's supposed to come back soon. I'm not sure when, but I do miss Bailey in the ring. When she changed her gimmick and went from being a babyface to a heel, and her slashing those Bailey buddies and the haircut change and everything else, I was just like, there she is. Because for me, she was always kind of there, but hadn't really done enough. She had some great matches with Sasha Banks in NXT, obviously Brooklyn, and I think don't remember what the next pay-per-view was when they had the Iron Woman match. Those were easily Bailey's best matches in NXT. And then once she got called up and changed her whole style, it was just like, there she is. And I personally believe she was one of the MVPs for the Thunderdome era.
I agree.
Yeah, it just, her and Sasha were just outstanding. But yeah, her injury was such an unfortunate thing. She was in the middle of a heated rivalry with Bianca Belair, who's another one who's just kind of blown out of the water. And yeah, so I'm hoping she's able to come back soon and just restart everything. But everybody else has been doing pretty good. Obviously, Becky, you really, you know, what can you say about Becky Lynch that's negative right now?
And so with Bailey coming back, would you bring her back as a heel or a face if it was up to you?
I guess it would depend on the landscape and who's big, who's in charge. I mean, you could easily bring her back to challenge Bianca, and keep her as a heel, because right now Bianca is probably the biggest female face that they have, and rightfully deserved. This woman is just out of her mind, having probably 2 of the best WrestleMania matches back to back.
Last year's was
in the last couple of years. Yeah, with Sasha last year and this year with Becky. It's just, the storytelling is just it's magnificent. Part of me hopes that Becky, since now that she's lost the title, she turns into this just has nothing but denial. No, she never lost the title. I saw things online that she was carrying around a replica title for the rest of WrestleMania night 2, and she'd go to the crowd and still have her title. So I'm really hoping that starting on, you know, this upcoming Raw, that we start to see that. I really don't want that feud to end just yet.
Yeah, me either. I mean, anything with Becky and Bianca is gonna be great. Wherever they go, I feel like.
For sure.
So with WrestleMania now in the rear view, we had a weird Raw after Mania, which felt like a regular episode, but SmackDown really did a great job bringing in some new talent from NXT. So they seem to be ready to go. So I'm hoping that this week's Raw will start to make that turn. But that's current wrestling. Let's talk older wrestling. Now, I made the joke that yes, I am the much older person in this chat. So I've been watching wrestling since the very early 90s. But for you guys, and we'll only start with Jack because he has the alphabetical advantage here. when did you start watching wrestling? Do you still watch it as much now as you did back then? What are you watching? Is it just WWE, or are you watching AEW and others?
Yeah, so I would say that graded school, like early graded school, probably. I think third, fourth grade. I can give you the years where I was most into it.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
so from like WrestleMania 26 to 30 was like my biggest time in it.
Okay.
And then but I've gone back and I've watched a lot like pre when I was like current in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I mean it started with SmackDown versus Raw 2010 actually.
Yes.
And then so like me and my friends would play that on the Wii, on the PS.
Great game.
And then I kind of got into watching it. And
Okay.
then being a young kid, I was a huge Cena fan. Um, I'm trying to think what else was back. That was like I remember like the Nexus was big. Um, Wade Barrett got buried. Looking
Yeah.
back,
Yep. That's
He sure did.
the Nexus had
Potential.
such potential. Exactly. And
I'm
they
glad it
just
didn't work out.
fumbled it, and it's
Very-
upsetting.
I hate Wade Barrett, so I'm glad that didn't work out.
Fair enough.
He could
Fair
have
enough.
been such a star.
I think he's I thought he was such a waste of talent.
Some harsh words. I like it. I just thought he had like the worst finisher ever, like the Wasteland. It's just like
Oh,
Yeah, true.
a slam over the top. It's like, really? Like, come on, you can be more inventive than that. At least when he busted out the bull hammer, I was like, all right, well, at least it's a strong forearm and it works. All right, it's better.
Yeah.
it like
Um,
it goes well with like his tough gimmick that like
Correct. I agree,
like,
100%.
it was a believable finisher for him for
Yeah.
somebody with his style. So then after that, when I got into high school, I still followed, not as closely. And then towards, right after, like leading up to WrestleMania 36, when Edge
Mhm.
came back,
Yep.
I started to get back into it again. Like I always had the network so that I could go back and watch, because I like to go like watch older stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like unless it's like current, like unless I'm watching it live, I'd rather go watch something like 10, 15, 20 years old. And yeah, so then the pandemic hit and I got very much back into it. I mean, it took up a lot of my time, just nothing else to do. I was listening to a lot of podcasts. I was watching a lot of old shows.
Nice.
And yeah, now I would say that I'm not watching every show
Mhm.
because I'm busy.
Right.
Life happens.
Yep.
You got-
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I follow it closely. I try to get all the pay-per-views, I'd say. But yeah, I would consider myself to be a pretty devoted fan.
Nice. Nice. All right, James, what about you, my friend?
So it's kind of similar for me. Early 2010s is really when I started watching. I definitely remember. So I'll say this now: Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler of all time. I love HBK,
Good choice.
and I'll go back now and I'll watch a lot of his older matches. And like the Shawn that I know best was the Shawn kind of at the end of his career, 08, 09.
Yep.
When he got retired in 2009 to kind of like 07 to 09 in that area.
Mhm.
He was really, really good from 2000. I would say Shawn, when he first came back from like 2002 to 2005, was really good still. And then after that, it kind of, his back and stuff finally caught up with him. And
Yeah.
he was kind of riding on Triple H's coattails a little bit more than he was in the past. He was still good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, because it's a Heartbreak Kid, the greatest in-ring performer in the history of the business. But so I would say that's around when I started watching. Cena is one of my favorites too. Cena is my second favorite. Love John Cena a lot. Loved him as the Doctor of Thugonomics. Liked him a lot. His battles with the Nexus were great.
Yep.
That was a good storyline. As much as I don't like the Nexus, that was a good storyline. I just liking John Cena so much is, I think, a big reason why I don't like Wade Barrett, and why
Makes
I didn't
sense.
think Wade, I shouldn't have said waste of talent. That wasn't like true. Wade Barrett to me was just kind of always overrated. Like he was one of those wrestlers that could have been so much better than he was, and he just wasn't anything. The same with kind of Jack Swagger.
Okay.
Jack Swagger could have been so good. And I mean, they tried pushing him as a world heavyweight champion when he was world champion, and it just didn't work. Like he has to be the worst world champion of all time, in my opinion.
I think he would have been good with a mouthpiece if they put
Correct.
him with somebody that could talk.
Yeah, exactly. Like if they could have paired him with somebody that was actually like knew how to like on a mic, like knew how to cut a promo.
Mm-hmm.
The minute he opened his mouth, his look just went away.
Yeah.
He was just spewing like jargon.
Yeah.
That made no sense.
No, not with him.
I feel like they were a little too late putting him with someone like Zeb Coulter, the man like who could talk. And they tried the stuff with the whole We the People, and they brought in Cesaro for a little while, and then that kind of fell apart as well.
That was disrespectful to Cesaro.
I know. There's another talent that I can't wait for him to pop up somewhere else. And
I mean Cesaro is such an underrated talent.
Yep. Yeah, he could have easily been world champion multiple times over, but for some reason, the higher ups just didn't believe in him, which is unfortunate. And he had the crowd support. He has the technical wrestling.
Right.
Oh,
very hot.
So here's another interesting take on my part, Scott. So I was watching a YouTube video the other day. YouTube's great. But I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and it was like I watched a lot of these like WWE like top 10 videos and stuff.
Yep.
And it was a top 10 video on top 10 wrestlers who could have been something but like weren't. Like who could have been huge stars but never panned out.
Yep.
Roman Reigns was like second on that list.
Well, that certainly changed now.
Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, to an extent, I agreed with it. Because I wasn't a big Shield fan.
Okay.
I don't really like Seth Rollins that much.
Wow.
He's all right.
All the hot.
But I don't really like him that much.
Jack's like ready to fight.
It's just, in my opinion, Seth Rollins is trying too hard to be Shawn Michaels, and that's not who he is. And I don't think he's ever going to be that.
Okay.
I know he was trained by Shawn and Triple H, but it's like, in my opinion, he tries too hard to be them when he should just focus more on being himself, because he has all the talent in the world. Seth Rollins is an incredibly gifted and talented skill in the ring. Extremely talented, but like the super kick and the pedigree and stuff like that, like to me, like everybody takes from somebody. I get that to an extent, but like, in my opinion, he's trying too hard with the pedigree. He's trying too hard with the sweet chin music. Like Dolph Ziggler did a super kick, but it wasn't Shawn Michaels-esque, if that makes sense.
Right.
It never will be.
I get what you're saying.
So like, in my opinion, like with Roman Reigns being like second on that list, I would say for a while he was kind of not necessarily a curtain jerker, but he was in the spotlight. Like he got to the door, but he didn't kick it in, if that makes sense.
Yep, no, it does.
Because he had plenty of big matches. He had big match after big match after big match and lost all of them.
But I think that's more. I think he wasn't booked properly right out of the gate. Like just like rocketed to the moon. I don't think was the right approach.
But yeah, I mean that could be part of it too, because I also think that they focused more on Seth Rollins after the Shield broke up and less of Roman Reigns. I also feel like the Shield theme song is pretty good, but I feel like Roman Reigns needs to change it up. You know, it's been long enough now where he can get something a little different that fits him a little bit better.
Well, I mean, he does now. I'm not sure how much you watch of the current product, but when Roman came back from his second bout of leukemia, he had the whole new persona, the whole head of the table, you know, tribal chief and everything else. Cool. And he got new music to it as well, and his whole demeanor just changed. And I think honestly, this is the Roman Reigns that I feel like we should have had from the beginning.
Exactly, I agree.
Because the crowd is behind him, or you know, they're making noise. Either they acknowledge him or they
Exactly.
hate his guts. So
They're
Exactly.
cheering him now more as a heel than they ever did.
Yep.
As a face.
right.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Well, like think of it this way, and like you can correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm too far off the beaten path. But like I said, like I just feel like Roman Reigns, like maybe Jack said, maybe he was just booked wrong, but like I feel like he was given too many opportunities too soon in a role that didn't fit him the best. I don't feel like when they were trying to put him in the spotlight, he was ready to be a star. Like his match at WrestleMania that he won against The Undertaker seemed very forced to me. That was not a very good match, in my opinion. But also,
Undertaker agrees
mind
with you on that, actually. So
I mean, it was The Undertaker at the end of his career, obviously.
Yeah.
But although his Boneyard match with AJ Styles was a phenomenal match.
that was great.
But
No pun intended.
yes. But like it just in my opinion, like I just felt like some of Roman's like big matches were very forced and they didn't like flow as well as they should have. Whereas like when you would watch like a John Cena match at WrestleMania or like Triple H or the other like stars of the company who I think Roman Reigns could be that next guy, could be like the guy who takes the company to the next level for a long time. You know, him, Cody Rhodes, if the WWE doesn't screw him over again. Randy Orton's still kicking, not to what he once was, but Randy Orton's still a star. Another wrestler, like I respect the hell out of Randy Orton as a talent, but being like, it's another thing. Being a John Cena fan, Randy Orton and John Cena are rivals. I can't like Randy Orton that much.
Fair enough.
And I feel like that goes both ways. If you're a Randy Orton fan, you're not going to like John Cena that much. And if you're a John Cena fan, you're not going to like Randy Orton that much. I have liked Orton more and more as the years have gone on. Like, I still don't like him a lot, but like, I'll cheer for him more now than I used to. And like, I respect him as a talent.
Yeah, the stuff he's doing right now with Riddle is I think he's even gone on the record as saying this is the most fun he's had in wrestling. And if that's the case, then I love it.
And Riddle's a nice, bright young star. I think Riddle's going to be very good.
Yep. No, I agree.
I think the fans like him.
They do. He's definitely over. But going back to your Roman Reigns topic, I feel like since I mentioned before, like he's come back from leukemia, I feel like he's picked up that torch, and he's started to run with it. His Universal, well, now undisputed WWE Universal Championship, whatever the hell they want to call it, with his reign of near 600 days. He's right now, I believe, in sixth all-time longest reign. Next is Peter Morales at 1,027. So he'd have to hold the title.
Punk's got to be up there, right?
For who?
Punk's got to be up there.
He's
right?
past Punk already.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Yeah. So when it comes to longest reigns, but yeah, he'd need to hold the title for another 400 plus days.
Of all time.
Longest reign of all time is, I believe it's Bruno Sammartino, and it's like
that's what I thought.
It's like 3 years. It's ridiculous, but we'll never have that again, because
that was like back in like the 60s, though.
Well, yeah, like 60s, 70s, and 80s, back when when wrestling was, you wouldn't have your champion at every show. There'd be like a unique spectacle that would come in. Champion would have a match, and so we'll never have reigns like that again. But Roman's now, at least for me, since it's really picked up steam, has been something special. And I don't want to see it end until you find a face that can be properly built, going through the Rumble, winning the Rumble, and then having a 6-week program building with Roman going into Mania, and then finally beating him at Mania in 2 years.
Yeah,
so
I definitely have him keep it until 40.
That's what I want. I just feel like it'd be great to have first off to have a champion hold on to their title for that long, have Roman just systematically destroy people leading up to 40, and then whoever is the Rumble winner of that year is able to take him down, and then that would be the end. I don't know what Roman would do after that, but just to have that
he'd probably retire.
Maybe. I mean, he's even talked about not being around for too much longer.
Young,
He is. Yeah. I mean, depending on what he wants to put his body through for the next, few years.
Exactly.
Main roster right now, like I'm not being negative, but I wouldn't want to see anybody on the main roster currently take it off of him.
No, I agree. I mean,
Uh,
besides the established superstars, I mean, some of the
I
young
disagree.
kids, they're growing, but yeah, they're not quite there yet. One of the big names that I've heard and I would not be upset about would be Braun Breaker. When he
Yeah.
eventually comes up,
That's what
I
I
think
said.
he'd be an excellent choice to take that title off of Roman. But then it just
Okay.
depends on how well he can do between now and then. If he kind of flounders, then it's not the right time. But who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be anybody from
Well,
NXT.
It'd be great for sure. I mean, that's what I was getting at, like to having when he's ready, and like him working with Rude and Ziggler right now is great for
Yeah.
for him. I
Sure
mean,
is.
to get
Sure is.
like on the job training,
Yep.
I mean, is great. And when he comes up, he's gonna be a star.
Oh yes.
Like I could definitely
Mhm.
see him being Roman level. I wish that they would just give him Rex Steiner
I know.
or Braun Steiner, anything other than Braun Breaker.
Yeah. I know.
I mean,
But
he's-
Vince wants his Vince wants his slice of the pie. So
Yes.
if he can't make money off your name, he's gonna change it.
It's annoying. That's Steiner.
Well, just one.
I agree.
So
Yeah.
annoying. And the Pete Dunne, the name changes make me so angry.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
Some of them,
One-
like Butch. Like, I mean, I get it.
Awesome. One of the worst names I've ever heard.
Yeah, he's like an aggressive newsie. That's really all he is. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine. I like the aggressiveness that he has. It's a lot more aggressive than he was when he was in NXT, and that's all good and fine. So at least he's putting some effort into the character. Whether how far it goes, I don't know. Hopefully, eventually he'll be like, well, I don't give a shit who Butch was. My name is Pete Dunne, and here we go.
Yeah.
Then of course you have people like Walter having his name changed to Gunther.
Mhm.
That one's not as egregious, I don't think.
Yeah, true. I mean, he. Do you guys know the backstory of it though?
No.
Apparently-
I mean, I don't like name changes at all. Just throwing it out there.
Okay.
I wish everybody could just keep their name as everybody knows him as.
Yeah, it'd be
That would have
easier.
been like the Undertaker changing his name. Like,
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
obviously not to the same extreme, but
right. Yeah,
or Triple H not being Triple H. Like,
right. Being terrorizing in WCW. Like, I mean, come on. Like, what nonsense
being
is
Hunter
this?
Hearst Helmsley.
Right.
again.
Well, I mean, that was his name, and you shortened it to Triple H. I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, but Triple H sounded way more badass.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, to fit the character so much better. But yeah, with both Gunther and his tag team partner, or at least his associate, Marcel Barthel, who's had his name changed this past Friday to Ludwig Kaiser.
yeah.
And honestly, if you think about it, the name actually fits. It works
That's
well.
not
It's
a
a
bad
very
name.
strong German name, so I mean, it works.
Yeah. Ludwig Kaiser
Um,
sounds good.
Yeah.
For
The,
them.
the problem was that both Gunther and Ludwig at one point, their last names were actually, I don't know if this was on purpose and somebody just didn't do their homework, but they were both based off of people that were in the Nazi party.
Oh,
So yeah, so somebody didn't do their homework, and the backlash was out. Oh my God, was ridiculous
was
once
a-
people started finding out. So they just chopped last names, and with Ludwig they just changed it to Kaiser instead of whatever else it was supposed to be. So
yeah, I was going to say that's a huge swing and a miss.
yeah. So whoever decided to make that decision clearly needs to
Probably
learn
got fired.
Well, maybe, I don't know. But
Well,
yeah,
that's a pretty bad mistake.
yeah, no, I agree 100%. Like, seriously, like there's no room for that nowadays. Like,
No.
you just need common sense.
It's like it's not the Jerry the King Lawler days of the WWE anymore.
Right, yelling puppies all the time. I mean, stuff
Exactly.
like, it was a different time. Nowadays, it's different, and it's more PG, which some people like, some people don't. Normally the people who don't, they go watch the other television show that airs on Wednesdays, and they love their blood and and everything else. So speaking of companies outside of WWE. Do you guys watch anything else? AEW and
I have
Impact.
seen bits and pieces of AEW. I feel like it has potential,
Mhm.
and I feel like it's done a very good job. The only reason why I pay attention to AEW though is because of Chris Jericho and CM Punk,
Fair enough.
really. And I mean the feud with Punk and MJF, whenever that match actually takes place, I can't wait for that. I bet that's going to be a good match because I feel like Punk's still got a little bit left in the tank because he retired fairly early in his career still.
Yeah, when he left,
I mean, mind you, he lost to the Undertaker, and that was the way it goes. But
that's true.
Just New Japan, I haven't really ever watched a lot of. Used to watch a little TNA. I go back and watch some TNA matches now. ECW, obviously, with Rob Van Dam and all the greats. WCW, so those are some of other companies that I watch. NXT is not like great in my opinion.
Fair enough.
So like I don't feel like NXT is as popular as AEW. I feel like AEW is kind of taking its place. Same with like Impact.
No, I agree. A lot of people were kind of upset about the change from the NXT Black and Gold brand to NXT 2.0. And a lot of the favorites either left or they moved up to the main roster, and they're still doing that now. The latest bunch of moves that have come up have been all stars that were there during Black and Gold. So they're really turning NXT 2.0 into their developmental brand. And well, it's been doing okay. It's been doing good. I do enjoy the shows, but yeah, it's for me like Undisputed Era and stuff like that. It's just that was peak NXT for me. Johnny Gargano and everything else.
I mean, it's true, but I think the NXT does, like you said, do a good job of funneling younger talent and maybe giving the younger talent a chance to fight or wrestle against some other professional wrestlers who have been in NXT for 2 or 3 years that are trying to, make it to the main card in WWE and get called up. Whereas, it gives them a chance to develop and hone their skills in before they just get thrown into the WWE and maybe fizzle out because they wouldn't have enough training.
True.
Whereas I think now with Cody Rhodes coming from AEW to the WWE, maybe that opens the door for maybe guys like MJF.
It's true.
And stuff like that. When those young stars of AEW get sick of, AEW and maybe are like, okay, why don't I try and take my talent to the big boys here, to the WWE and see what happens there? You know what I mean?
I get it.
Not saying that, like I said, not saying AEW is bad, but I'm just saying I feel like Cody Rhodes coming to the WWE opens the door for guys like MJF and the young stars of AEW.
I agree. Jack, I know you're patiently waiting.
Sorry, I've talked a lot, Jack.
I was just gonna I watch a little bit of AEW, and the more I think there's I'm not one of the people that are blind in love with it. I think they do a lot of things wrong, but I think when they get something right, it's great. Like the Punk MJF is awesome. And what I was gonna say was I pray to God that he doesn't end up in WWE because I would hate to see him messed up.
Like PG MJF, yeah.
That's a good point.
Mike and he goes out and says awful stuff that would never fly on WWE. That's what makes him him.
No, I agree, 100%.
That's a good point.
I wouldn't want to see a watered down version of him. So if I think he's great, MJF. He's definitely one of my favorites in the business, watching him for sure.
To that, I also think that if MJF were to make it to the WWE, Vince would give him what he wanted and kind of let him be what he is. Because think about it, like Punk in the WWE, he broke a lot of rules and stuff. He didn't care what people thought about him. He didn't care what people about how people thought of him and what he said. He did not care. Punk just said what he did. He dropped pipe bombs. That's what he was best at. But also it was like Scott has brought up, it was a different time in the business when CM Punk was doing that. Whereas MJF and CM Punk, two very good people on the mic work well together in the AEW, like work well as two good rivals in the AEW or in AEW.
Yeah, and I agree. I think to AEW's benefit, their workers have more freedom, definitely
Mm.
creative, which is awesome. You love
For
to see
sure.
it. Like I wish they would let like more of that like in the WWE, like if Rollins could do his own thing, like if Cesaro had more say in his creative, I think like Scott you touched on earlier, he could have been had a huge run as a champion.
Very.
You know, like Rollins is right now, I think the Cody match elevated him definitely being in that high profile match. But like
Mm-hmm.
the laugh and just getting overplayed.
I'm not gonna
For
lie.
sure.
I love his cackle so much. Him, Bailey, and Sasha's. They're so
Whose cackle? Seth
blood
Rollins?
curdling, but it's just so I don't know. I've always been a big fan of heels, pretty much my entire life. And when they have that one characteristic that just sticks out, it just I don't know. I love it so much. When you talk about the wrestlers having more freedom to do their promos and whatnot, I think it's basically a big thing with trust. If Vince doesn't trust you to deliver your lines in a way that he thinks the crowd will respond, he'll script you to death. He did that with Roman for the majority of his early on in his career. The biggest part was when he had his feud with John Cena, and Cena literally just called him out on it when he was younger. It was the big flaw in Roman Reigns at the time. Nowadays, my God, you put Roman up against anybody, and his promos have been absolutely stellar. So
Agreed.
I don't know if when he was at home, reevaluating things after he was fighting leukemia, he just said, "Screw it, we're gonna go to 11, and we're just gonna knock this shit out of the park." And I
Exactly.
personally believe that he's been able to do so.
Me too. I think he's been
Seth,
the best thing in the business for since he's been back. To be honest, to be completely, that's just my opinion.
I will
I
agree
don't
with
think
you on
there's
that.
somebody that feels and say, like the AW people love AW, the WWE people blindly love WWE. I feel like I'm like, and I'm guessing you are too, being like in this kind of being like a job for you. You gotta have to be unbiased.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny.
Like I think Roman feels like the biggest thing in wrestling, at least to me. Like in terms of the Usos are legit now.
Mhm.
They feel more legit than they've ever felt. Heyman with anybody except um, Curtis Axel, right?
Oh,
He
that's true. Oh, that's so true. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's
but
true.
Heyman has got to be one of the best managers ever.
Yeah, definitely.
Easily.
For sure.
Yeah.
Probably him, Heenan, and Corny.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, we can't, even though most people don't like Jim
Whoa. Are we
Cornette
just gonna
nowadays.
rule Paul Bearer out here like he doesn't exist?
I'm a big Cornette guy, so it's big of me
Oh,
to
whoa.
AEW does a lot right.
Yeah, Cornette and all those guys are good for sure. But Paul Bearer is an icon.
That is true too. Yeah, that is very true.
I mean, I don't know if you would really consider Paul Bearer a manager or what you would consider him.
Well,
But
I would consider him a manager that really isn't the mouthpiece. He did his talking, obviously, but you didn't rely on his speech to get you through. He had his whole get up. That was really his thing.
yeah.
And when he was with Taker and Mankind and Kane, and stuff like that, like he helped those other characters become bigger names for themselves.
Yes.
Without taking, he didn't take away from their greatness. He only added to it.
I was gonna say too, like I feel like when WWE had Paul Bearer work with like Kane and Mankind and The Undertaker, I really feel like they picked his spots very, very well.
Mm.
Like they put Paul Bearer with like 3 or 4 really good wrestlers that he could kind of mesh well with, and that his type of brand really worked well with, Kane and the Undertaker and Mankind, you know,
Mhm.
Undertaker, the dead man, you know, Kane on the dark side of things as well. Same with Mankind, you know, just hardcore, like hard nosed, just tough wrestlers, like fan favorites with that too.
I love McFoley on the mic.
Yes.
Oh,
He
great.
is- just because and it's so different, like articulate, but so like passionate, and you
Yeah.
buy it.
Yes.
This.
Mick Foley's an underrated great.
Agreed. No, I agreed.
Underrated in the ring for sure.
I always loved when he'd have a passionate promo. He'd always end it with the bang bang. Either
Yeah.
that or he'd be like the patent and have a nice day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or right here in whatever insert town name here to get that cheap pop. You know, it was always
exactly.
those things that I loved about Mick.
Like when I talk about Mick Foley, like I'm talking about like Mick Foley, but I'm talking about like all of them together, like Dude Love, Cactus Jack, and Mankind on top of like Mick Foley.
Yep.
Because like, and that takes a special type of talent that I don't think people understand. To be able to play 4 gimmicks that well,
Yep.
is hard.
Agreed. Yeah.
I mean, besides Mick Foley, I think Mankind's probably his most notable gimmick, probably his best. But like, in my opinion, there's been no other superstar, and we'll probably never see it again, of somebody that can play 4 roles at the same time and have 4 different storylines going on with each of those characters and have it work. Because think about it. There was a Royal Rumble where all 4 of those characters were in it. Mankind was in it. Cactus Jack was in it. Mick Foley was in it. Dude Love was in it.
That's
So
true.
it's like, that takes a special type of talent to be able to act that well in the different roles, especially all in one night or all at the same time, having to deal with the different storylines. You know, Mankind was Mankind was the hardcore,
Oh yeah.
you know, wrestler.
So,
Cactus
Well,
Jack was
yeah. See,
a
Cactus
hardcore
Jack might be the
wrestler.
hardcore guy. Yeah.
Mankind was the insane wrestler,
Yeah.
the crazy one.
Yeah.
Dude Love was the kind of, you know, upbeat, kind of nicer guy. Mick Foley was like a mix of all of it.
Yep.
But I just think that like he doesn't get enough credit for like how much he did for the business and like how hard it is for him to be able to do like all 4 gimmicks and do them so well.
Right. Jack, what were you saying?
I was just saying, like with the Mick, when James was described, like Mick, I think is himself unapologetically. You know,
Exactly.
like the Mick, I think that was just him, just Mick Foley. Like especially
It
in
is.
the early 2000s when he was back doing stuff with like Evolution, like the GM of Raw. Like I feel like that was
Exactly.
not really working, just him.
Exactly. It was just Mick Foley.
Mrs. Foley's
Sacco.
baby boy.
Yeah.
I miss Sacco though. The days with Sacco and like the outfits that like Mick Foley wore were kind of like Jack said, they were him.
Yeah.
Like guys in the ring weren't going to wear that stuff besides him. It was just Mick Foley. Like that was him.
That was his shtick. Yep. No, absolutely. So let's see. So we covered Mania, we covered you guys' wrestling past, we covered what you currently are watching. So what are the topics wrestling wise? What do you like? What don't you like right now? And you know, let's talk about it.
What don't
I
like?
think go ahead, Jack. I'll let you start this time.
Yeah, and either so just general stuff or like
Yeah.
nitpick stuff.
I mean, the general stuff. I mean, do you feel like a certain character is not doing as well as you think they should be? Like, do you think that, you know, maybe the main roster is not a good fit for them, or, you know, even non WWE stuff? Like, what's some of the other stuff that you might be watching? Like, what do you think should change, and what do you like right now?
So for WWE, I think it's like they don't get out of their own way sometimes
Okay.
and don't let things just progress naturally. Like a lot of the things a lot of the storylines feel very forced. Like how we've talked about how like with Roman, a lot of his stuff like at 31, 32, and 33 felt very like shoved down your throat.
Yep.
And like the Bryan, like with Daniel Bryan, like if they just let that story leading to Mania 30 progress naturally, like that, I wish we could see more of that.
Right. No, I definitely agree.
Natural. And like I remember, so like going into WrestleMania 36, the 36, right? That's the first one back from the pandemic, right?
36 was the one that was supposed to be, I believe, in Tampa the first time, and then it ended up being in
37 then.
yeah, 36. Well, yeah, 36 was supposed to be in Tampa. It ended up being in the Performance Center, and then 37 was supposed to be in Dallas, and then they moved
And
it
then
to
wound up
Tampa.
being in Tampa.
Yeah, they moved it to Tampa.
Just some of the things I wish, and you know, like I was actually talking about this with somebody the other day that says like the fans shouldn't dictate what happens because that's not what happens in other sports.
Fair enough. Fair
At
enough.
the same time, you know, I do see that argument, but
Mhm.
also when when a worker's hot, I feel like the WWE especially um, most times does not capitalize on that.
Mhm.
I definitely agree with you. I think at least for me, the last real natural progression into a Mania would be Kofi.
Mhm.
Because with
I agree.
Kofi, that was a whole situation where he wasn't even supposed to be in the Elimination Chamber match. It was supposed to be Mustafa Ali, and then he ended up getting hurt. Kofi was the last minute addition, and the crowd just jumped on him. And then the storyline that came out of that leading into Mania with his match versus Daniel Bryan, which I would say would be for me my second favorite story leading in under right behind WrestleMania with Daniel Bryan. Like I just love those natural progression of things. And you're right, it didn't feel forced. It wasn't like Roman where they were just shoving Roman down everybody's throats, and the
Or
crowd
even,
was tired of it.
That James and I were younger, so you don't see that side of it. But I'm sure when we like loved Cena, your like generation was very tired of seeing him in that spot.
Not so much the spot. I think the majority of people, and I was kind of in that vein for a little while. They were just tired of the character. It was the same character since he changed from the Doctor of Thugonomics. They wanted him to turn heel. He just refused. He just wanted to be himself, but it worked because the crowd either loved him or hated him. I always like to listen to the crowd reaction, and when it came to Cena with me, it was always the young kids and the women were always cheering for him. And then anybody who would like hit puberty and up for a male hated him.
I agree.
Let's go, Cena. Cena sucks.
Yes, exactly. You know, for years that just reigned over television whenever Cena was on. And it was a lot of fun. Would I have loved to have seen him turn heel? Absolutely. I think like the closest we ever saw that, he teased it once in a promo in the ring when he literally did a heel turn with his heel, like, oh no, look, there's my heel turn. And then something as dumb as that. And when they did
that's Cena though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Unapologetically Cena. And also I think the other one would be the cinematic he did with Bray Wyatt.
That was good.
Out as the NWO gear and everything else, and my heart almost had a heart attack because I'm a huge NWO fan, and you know, having Cena come back leading a new one would be just ridiculous. Jack, what's up?
It just popped in my head. Could you imagine if he had cheated to beat The Rock at the first time they wrestled at WrestleMania? That would have been a time and place, I think, that could have worked.
Agreed. Honestly, like I was surprised The Rock beat him, to be honest with you. I did not expect that whatsoever. I was completely shocked by that. But yeah, you're right. If they see, now I'm thinking about it. If they would have pulled that trigger back then, man,
that would have been the heel turn for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing that I like I like most about the WWE now is like I feel like they do a good job at bringing in young talent and progressing the young talent now, whereas 10 years ago I think they really struggled with that and they were kind of stuck in the okay, these are our guys. We're going to stick with these. Like let's stick to that. And that's one of the things I like the most now. One of the things I don't like a lot of is I feel like WWE lets a lot of main card talents go a lot sooner than they should before they give them like a real chance. Whereas they give guys that wind up fizzling out too much of a push. And they don't give the guys that should have gotten a push enough of a push. Like Braun Strowman should be in the WWE. Like I feel like he will make a return at some point. Like I feel like you can push him along. He'll have a big enough fan base. He could be kind of like a modern day Big Show type guy.
He's kind of
But
bearing
Braun Strowman's wicked athletic too.
True. What was that, Jack?
a CYN. I think he's gonna bury himself with that mess.
Yeah, the whole control your narrative thing with EC3 and that whole group. Yeah, that's been a very polarizing
and I would
situation.
argue with James, like not just that. I would take the opposite of what he said.
Okay.
Like with making stars, I think 20 years ago they did a good job of making stars. Versus now,
Yeah,
like think of like coming up through like so all in the company, like think early 2000s, all in the company at once. You had the stars of the 90s that were fizzling out.
Mm-hmm.
Like The Rock was on his way to Hollywood, Austin was on his way out. Then you kind of had Triple H there to take the reins. And then coming right up was Orton, Lesnar, Cena, Batista, like all those guys that carried into the 2010s.
Yeah.
Jericho.
Jericho. Other than I would say Roman and Seth, I don't think
That's
made a big star that feels as big or as Triple H or Austin or
yeah. I agree. That's a good point. But to me, I feel like that's different because like back then they didn't have the NXT to develop. They just basically had to come into the WWE and say like, "Hey, I just had to do it."
Well,
Like-
that's not 100% true. They did have OVW for a while. They had FCW as well, but they weren't on Well, I mean, think about it. They were on television, but only in Florida. So yeah, they didn't have a mainstream crew like they do now with NXT. But to Jack's point, yeah, the ruthless aggression era when Cena came up, slaps Kurt Angle across the face, and then they're off and running. You know, that was the time when they brought in new stars and
made stars.
Exactly, and they made stars. The problem after that is then they just ran with those guys. It was Orton, it was Cena in the main event for 1,000 years. You know, then it was Edge and John Cena, which I think is still a very underrated feud, and stuff like that. Or, yeah, it's just they tried it with the Nexus, and then that
was tragic.
The only real positive out of the Nexus was Daniel Bryan, and then Daniel Bryan gets hurt, and then Daniel Bryan has to retire, and then
Daniel Bryan comes back, and then.
I mean, really though, that's the stars. They were a lot more successful at making stars in the 90s, in the early 2000s.
I agree.
Yeah.
But
I mean, they don't
to
feel
Scott's point.
Yeah,
I agree. But to like Scott's point, I also feel like they would make a couple stars like Cena, Orton, and then they just run with those guys for 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see the WWE just run with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes if they give him a push for 15 or 20 years.
No, I think at least from my
there's more potential.
Yeah, there's more potential now, definitely.
Shift for sure too, right? Like there were changes in the higher ups. Like I'm sure Scott, like the talent relations switched from JR to
the Johnny Ace, stuff like that, and it's
and then it was not, JR I think has one of the best eyes for talent in the
history.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah,
it turned like if you remember like Luther Reigns and John Hyde and Snitsky, and like these were the guys that that Johnny Ace, and because Johnny Ace and Vince and was Pritchard with the
Yep.
WWE.
Yep.
And Johnny
They-
Ace, terrible wrestler.
They love that. That like big guys that don't
Oh yeah.
that are awful workers. And I
Yeah.
and I know
Whereas,
awful, but like Luther Reigns was off. Like they
Mm-hmm.
didn't do them any favors with creative either. I feel like creative
Right.
got bad at that time as well.
Yeah, if you weren't 6'6" and 360 pounds, Vince didn't want you, or the main roster, they didn't want you there. They didn't give many of the more average person's height. They didn't give them much chance to really do much. Of course, you obviously have your examples like Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero before he passed away, Kurt Angle. They had
Benoit and Malenko.
Right.
And he should have been used more too in the company.
Dean Malenko, definitely.
Yeah. See, I was lucky enough to be able to watch him in WCW
now,
before he
so.
came over. Huh?
We're getting you going now.
I know, yeah.
Oh yeah, we're talking Scott's language now.
Yes, the old WCW days.
The best era of wrestling, in my opinion, was like 2002 to like 2007, 8 in that area, like the ruthless aggression era, sort of the end of the attitude era, kind of in.
It's funny, like I see. I love this because you guys are so much younger than I am. Like for me, like living through the attitude era was it was literally batshit crazy every Monday night. Whether it was WCW, whether it was WWF at the time,
Raw, like
it was insanity every single week. Like you look at I know the ratings don't mean as much as they did back then, but you look at the ratings, you have 8 million plus watching wrestling every single week. And nowadays they struggle, WWE struggles to get 2, and AEW barely hits 1 at most times. So you can see the big downfall in people watching it on TV.
exactly.
But it's just, for me, like it was just a different time, and it was just like I didn't know what to expect. And of course, I was at that age where I was growing up, and WWF did some risky stuff on television, and it's just like you don't want your folks walking in at that exact moment because God forbid you don't need to explain yourself to what you're watching when that shit's happening. But nowadays, when you talk about the ruthless aggression, for me, I believe that's the second, at least personal opinion, it's the second best era of wrestling because you had that new fresh crop of talent that rolled in.
And what do you consider the ruthless aggression? Like from 02 to 08 PG, right?
That's kind of what I was saying.
Yeah. The PG, I think PG era really started more in like the 2010s. They weren't doing nearly as much when it came to like the crude stuff that they were doing during the Attitude Era, but they had the brand extension when Raw versus SmackDown was the big thing, and they threw in ECW for a little bit when WWE brought them back. Stuff like that. That was for me, that was a fun time of wrestling, but it wasn't nearly as like adrenaline filled as what the Attitude Era was.
I agree.
But it still was good wrestling, and I really enjoyed it. Nowadays, it's different. I think people call it the reality era, or at least they used to call it that. I'm not sure what they call it right now.
That's a fair.
But it's just, it's different. There are some really, really good things that I really enjoy, and then there's other stuff where it's just like, okay, they're trying. Doesn't really resonate with me yet, but maybe down the road it will.
And here's a good thought, and this is how I know the company's changed so much, because think about it, back in like 2002, 3, 4, 5, in that area, like you had people going through flaming tables and tacks in the ring, and Mankind got thrown off a 25-foot steel cell through a table. Like that stuff just doesn't happen now. And to me, that's a big loss for the company. You had Shane McMahon jumping off Titantrons. You had Jeff Hardy doing swanton bombs off ladders through 3 tables through people. Yep. Like the business was just so much more entertaining at that time, because you had Cena giving people attitude adjustments off Camaros.
Right.
And like, you know what I mean? Like to me, the company was just so much more entertaining to watch then, because it's almost like a train wreck. Like you don't want to see anybody get hurt, but like you can't look away.
Right. No, I
Like,
completely
you want to
agree.
see somebody get hit with a steel chair. You want to see somebody get thrown through a table. You want to see somebody get body slammed on tacks, like get hit with a barbed wire baseball bat. Like, in my opinion, and it's probably just with how the world is today, honestly, but like the WWE is so much softer now than it was. But like, that's just my opinion. And also, the point you brought up, Cena coming back as the NWO.
Mhm.
If he ran an NWO, could you imagine Cena, Randy Orton, and one more old school star
Yep.
as the NWO? That would be badass.
That would be. I agree. Unfortunately, I think that time has passed. But still,
Cena's best days are behind him.
well, yeah. I mean, he put in his work though. I mean, so you
He
really
did.
can't knock him for not being able to wrestle now.
No, one of the greatest of all time for sure.
What were you gonna say, Jack?
I was just saying he can still go.
Oh yeah. Oh no, definitely. Yeah, he can still go. I believe in an interview he said that he's no longer able to go like every day full time like the stars do now, but yeah, he's definitely not done yet. You know, I'll be back, and so I look forward to that.
Me too.
So it'll be a lot of fun. But guys, thank you so much for being on this. This was a fantastic talk. I really truly appreciate it. Before we head out, it's up to you guys if you want to give your socials. Their socials, yeah. So give your social security number so everybody can take and steal your identity. No, I'm just kidding. Your social medias. That way, you know, if people want to follow you guys. And so again, we'll go with the alphabetic. And Jack, if you want, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll give my Instagram if anybody wants to follow. Just my name, so Jack Cushman, Jack_Cushman, 02.
Perfect.
And I'll also give my Instagram.
Okay.
James.salvis99
Perfect.
is my personal Instagram.
All right. So though, for the rest of you, if you don't already, please follow us on Twitter at Above the Ring. You can find us on Facebook at Ship It Above the Ring, on Instagram as _Above the Ring, and on YouTube as Above the Ring. You can find myself pretty much everywhere as Scotty G Stream. And you can find this podcast on basically every podcasting platform that is out there. If you're listening on one that we're not a part of, let us know. Add ourselves to it. That way you can do all your one-stop podcast shopping and add a little bedlam to your day from Above the Ring. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, James. Thank you, Jack, for joining me tonight. This was a lot of fun. And I look forward to talking to you guys in class, and we'll see how many people we can get from the college to listen to this and spread the love. So once again, I appreciate everybody for the listens. I appreciate my guests for tonight. Most importantly, though, please do not forget to ship it and join the Bedlam.